Hello and welcome to the David Eames On Your Mind podcast. I'm always joined by the lovely Mikey Markham, but alas, no Owen Oxley today. I think he might have joined the French Foreign Legion. Or he's working, I'm not sure. So today I want to talk about creativity. I'm not necessarily just talking about creativity in an artistic sense, as we'll perhaps come to see during the session. It's something that we can apply in multiple areas of our life. How important is creativity to you, Mikey?
I'd say it's everything to me nowadays. And I did have it very linear as that one thing. It was, music, that's creative, or drawing a picture, and that'd be it. And at school, as we've spoke about a bit on this podcast, I just didn't enjoy the education system fully, and it didn't touch the sides for me. And basically the idea I came out with was I'm really dumb and I've not got any purpose or anything to go toward. So I really stood away from the creativity scene. It just didn't fit me. And the thing that was always ingrained to me was kind of make money. So there's a lot of panic outside of school because I didn't get any grades, I didn't have any passions, and my granddad was just fierce on, you need to make the money. So that's heavily why I stuck away from the creativity scene, because I thought there's no money in art. Why would you go down that path? And it was only in my life when I lost a friend through a knife crime incident that one day while I was looking after primates in South Africa, and we had to do observations of these monkeys every 20 minutes, like write down what they've been up to. And when I got this phone call about my friend, my usual coping mechanisms would have been girls or probably substances or something like that, hearing bad news or receiving something. But on that day I didn't have anything like that to do, and I just had this pen and paper in front of me, so it started falling onto the page. And I didn't care about, at the time, grammar, spelling, punctuation, any of those. I just wanted to get my story on the paper, and it felt incredible. It was the most cathartic experience I've ever been through. So then after that, I was writing everything down in all different forms, and I was looking into poetry more, because poetry, if you'd have told me we're studying poetry at school, I'd have told you to F off probably in a certain sense. But then because I was out there kind of writing rhymes a lot of the time, that rhymes.
Almost.
It rhymes all the time. Definitely rhymes.
Rhymes all the times, maybe, but not all the time.
Depends how you say it.
Near miss.
I started looking into poetry and started reading poems, and I thought, this is really beautiful. So that was my first real step into the creative scene, necessarily. But as you were sort of alluding to at the start, I think it seeped into all aspects of my life, and I've noticed creativity can come in any moment. And when we're devising a session on the farm or however we're being, we really want to include somebody that just you can't get through to.
So what is creativity?
Thinking, but it's imagination. It's thinking of things that haven't been a lot of the time. Do you have a definition for it? Because you inspire me.
Well, no, but that's why I asked you to do it.
I was trying. I think it's
quite hard. I think
thinking outside the box.
It's unscripted, perhaps.
I like that.
Unplanned, making something new, off the cuff, in the moment.
Yeah.
I think for me, creativity is a big part of my client work, because I never know what a client's going to bring. Even if it's a client I've been working with for quite some time, they can turn up one day and they've had a catastrophe or a triumph the previous day. And I just have to go with it. And I love that part of my job, that I just have to respond in the moment to that person as things arise.
Because I think some people have asked to do podcasts with me before, and they've not really thought about the art of a conversation and how much creativity it is to keep firing different answers and thinking a question on the spot. And within the first, I've had it probably even 5 minutes before, you could just see them freeze up.
Yeah.
And I know it's when the cameras are on and you press play and it's like go, but also there's an element to, I don't think you've really considered how creative it is to have a conversation with somebody before. It's like, I just want to promote my thing, or I just want to do this. But it takes some to have that conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there are different ways to have conversation. You can just be sort of idly gossiping, trotting out stock phrases.
Yeah.
Or you can be enjoying almost like a slalom run.
Yeah.
And you don't know where it's going to end up. And I love that, the free-flowing conversational form. People talk about the art of conversation, and it is the case. I think we can bring creativity into everything you do. If you're cooking a meal,
I've just got into cooking.
I mean, I cooked lunch for my wife and I today. I did a quiche, but I did it a slightly different recipe to what I've ever done before. All the time, it's changing a bit. I think, let's try this, let's try that. And
it takes away this is stagnation a word?
Yeah.
Yes. It takes away that out of life, because you can really just get into routine, and this is the way I do it, this is the way I do it. But picking a different route to work some days, I've walked that way the other day and I noticed things I'd never noticed. But it did put me in a creative feeling, and we could go down here and we can go through there, and it took away that mundane, I've got to walk that way home and I'm going to go, it's going to be all the same. It felt different. So I think what you're saying there, if you can put it into your cooking, if you can put it into even your walking and where you're going, it brings that imagination in.
Yeah, so perhaps what we're saying here then is that creativity is a kind of mindfulness in a way.
Yeah.
It's a way of being more in the moment. Because you're having to use more of your brain if you're going to be working creativity. See, I'm testing these teeth out for the dog today creatively. That you've got to be able to go with it. One thing I like it when we do the radio show, with Aaron Vermer on Radio Nottingham, that he just throws something to you and you don't know what's coming, and you can't be silent on the radio. You've just got to come up with something.
For me, that's where I'm often coming out with the best stuff. I've hated when it's quite contrived. I've been told you need to create this for this project and you need to do this, and then it starts becoming quite forced. But I do understand that there is a place for that. You do need to sometimes force and squeeze creativity, and that's a bit of a struggle for me.
Yeah, but it's a different. I suppose what we're saying there is creativity isn't one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's multiple. There's the artistic creativity, whether it's figurative arts or more literary art. It's and some of the greatest art isn't very spontaneous. It takes a great deal of work. So we use one word which covers a whole load of different activities.
Yeah.
But I think an essential component of the human experience.
It's important to think in that way, isn't it? Or I believe so, because I've so many friends, and you bring the word creativity up and the head just drops, because they go, that doesn't include me, that isn't who I am. I'm not a creative.
Yeah.
I've got my best friend, actually, who always sort of calls himself like, I can do the intellect side, but I can't do the creative side. And that's a conversation we have. I'm like, mate, I've seen you help people. I've seen you have great conversations, and you don't understand how much to listen to someone and understand what they're going through and what to put next is a really beautiful art.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a very important point there, which is, as we embarked on this conversation, I thought I wanted to touch on the whole idea of how people exclude themselves from things by describing themselves by the things that they can't do.
Yeah.
And maybe never actually finding out what it is that they can do, because they've already defeated themselves with that, no, I can't do that. Because it's like, I've worked with clients sometimes we talk about doing art, doing something creative as a way of an outlet of the feeling of a sort of lack of meaning in life, or it's a way of dealing with anxiety. And I say that if you do a painting, it's right, because it's yours. You might want to do it differently or better in the future, but that kind of doesn't matter. It's not for somebody else to say what's right and what's wrong. It's for you to be able to express yourself.
Particularly with art, and that's why I struggled with going to poetry nights sometimes, and hear it. I had a mate, or an ex-mate, because he was just so horrible to people. They're rubbish, they're not there. Like, mate, it's all subjective. This is just their story in their way.
Yeah.
They put a spin on it and they're telling it. That, for me, was really inclusive, and we're all there as a bit of a unity together of, it's great because it's you. But he was just so adamant there was this league table, a poetry table, where everybody was just climbing to the top. And it felt very much that was such a linear way of thinking too.
Yeah, does it speak to you?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it doesn't speak to someone else. And we all can communicate something to different groups of people, different individuals. Sometimes we don't even know what the impact is of something. I sometimes have a client say to me, when we spoke last time, you said something to me that meant the absolute world to me. And I thought, I wonder what it was I said.
Did you not know?
Not aware of saying anything that I felt particularly profound. I've no idea.
Yeah.
But this is something that happens on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because it's just some phrase just chimes with someone. And it's maybe because I'm just, machine gunning so much stuff out there, some of it's bound to hit the target.
Is reading a creative act?
It's how you do it, isn't it? Sometimes it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you're thinking about, okay, what is the author trying to say, even if it's a thriller, trying to work out how it's going to go, what the story's going to do, there's an element of creativity in that. I think the whole idea, you're marking down anything as being creative when you're creating. Hey, it's kind of obvious
sense.
when you think about it.
Now you said it, I'm like, oh, David, sorry, wow. How have we not thought of that? It is, bringing something to life.
Yeah, and something that maybe didn't exist for you before, or maybe didn't even exist in the world before. I love that. I mean, I'm a black belt in the art of cross-stitch embroidery. It's such a butch activity.
Are you actually?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
But, I mean, so I've done a few portraits of them and, one of my dog.
Dude, we could get you here now doing some workshops.
No. But, I mean, it's taken me over a year to do one because, like 100,000 stitches in it. And it's a very precise thing. But there's a creativity in figuring out the picture that you want to do and then converting that. And then I love the slow discovery of the stitches turning into a picture. It's you can't really quote him now, but can you tell what it is yet? Because it's a blank canvas, and the picture only emerges after a while. At first, it's just stitches on a blank canvas.
When you're doing that, have you been in them moments where you look up at the clock and you can't quite believe what time it is?
Yeah,
that's my favourite thing to ever experience. Yeah. I think it definitely happened to me in poetry, but really where it most happened was in videography. And I started doing music videos for people, but they would want really hard effects and stuff to get, and I had to learn how to do that on YouTube tutorials. And the enjoyment that I felt in trying to freeze frame on what they're doing and put it into the film that I had. And there was days where Chrissy was a school teacher at the time, and she'd be going at about 6 a.m. And we didn't have kids at that time, so I'd be downstairs, I'd get my black coffee, I'd be on it, and then she walked back through the door, and that meant it was like 4 o'clock, and I'd been in this little cave the whole day. But it was, I remember them feelings of flow state, and it was really special. That was something for me.
Yeah, and is that learning or is that creativity? So what we're saying then, is there an element of creativity in learning as well?
Yeah, definitely. You've got to have a thirst for it, because the polar to that in learning has been where we've been sat in the lesson and it thinks like the clock's going backwards at times. You looked at it, you see it in a film, don't you? Or Simpsons often do this, where they do loads of other stuff and it does this time lapse, and then they look back at the clock and it's 1 minute has passed.
Yeah. When I was younger, I was not very good at being taught, but I was very good at learning. I'd get things quite quickly, but I had to discover it for myself. It was a new skill I had to learn later in life, to how to be taught by people and take something from that. And that was, again, about being more engaged in it. I probably drove my classmates mad when I was studying for counselling, because I'd be the one going, no, I don't understand that yet. No, to explain that again, I don't. And they'd go again, shut the fuck up, will you? But I'd need to engage and understand it. So I took a more active role in the process.
What was you said a word earlier and I wanted to catch you up? What, figurative? I keep hearing it. I wanted to learn that, but I let it go. What's that word?
Well, it just it's a pictorial sort of thing.
Okay.
You know, that rather than in words, it's in figures, in pictures.
I love that.
Yeah.
And when you said that about being at school and you found it hard to be taught, was there any moments a teacher did reach that or did notice that in you and turned it into a different way for you?
Well, there was one teacher in particular that struck me. I think that was a guy called Mr. Hindley. Steve Hindley was his nickname, and he was an English teacher, and he taught me how to enjoy Shakespeare.
Okay.
By going through it and explaining it and then getting us engaging with it. But he was just a bit of a dude, you know. He'd rock up on a Friday afternoon, stick his feet on the desk, and say, "I don't want to teach today. I don't believe in God. What do you lot think?"
That's a dude move. Yeah. That's a proper dude move.
But encouraging thinking.
Yeah.
And you know, I did reasonably well at school, but I struggled to engage with it. It went too slowly. I like to go at my own pace. So in later life, when I was sort of writing software in banking, I was entirely self-taught.
Okay.
But that also meant that I hadn't been taught how things were done. So I'd always be thinking, I wonder if, you know, can you do things? So, you know, if people have ever used Excel spreadsheets, you can put charts on them. And when I was producing data for the management, I thought, I wonder if I could make it so the charts are interactive, so they can choose what things they're looking on the charts, over what scales and things like that. I didn't know it was possible, and a month later I designed something to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was in the very fortunate position having management who said, yeah, give it a go, David, see what happens.
But that creativity comes when it's in a time of need again, wasn't it? You were sort of...
Well, it just seemed like a good idea.
Yeah.
And it was interest, I guess. So here's another thing, really, I suppose, that curiosity drives creativity, doesn't it? It's that I wonder if, you know, what can I do that's different?
Is that kind of important then to find that creativity? It can't often always just come in a moment. It's having a bit of an exploration about you. It's thinking about something. It's giving yourself time and taking yourself out for a minute to ponder it.
Maybe that, but sometimes it's about being in the moment as well and responding differently. I mean, I guess what I'm seeing here is creativity is, rather than being an activity, is, in my view, perhaps more a way of life.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's just about being engaged with whatever you're doing. So, you know, someone's on a football field. I remember the goal that Gaza scored against Scotland. And I mean, what a creative moment that. He just flicks the ball in the air over the defender and bangs it in the net.
Yeah.
It came to him in that moment. That's not pre-planned.
Yeah.
It's just the thing to do. And it's a kind of art form. You know, watching sort of Ben Stokes play the cricket recently, it's artistic way of changing the way he bats to the different circumstances. Almost everything that we do can have that element of creativity if you're in the moment. So I guess there's a mindfulness to it, in my view, and there's a engaging in life in a more authentic, full way.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels and layers to it, isn't there? Because being really well practiced, the reason he could do that as well.
Yeah.
He knew exactly the way the ball was going to manoeuvre and what he was doing with it. I was thinking to times where you're going through what you feel is a lot of turmoil and struggle, and you're in the heat of a situation, but being able to take a breath away from it and be creative in your thinking toward it and not keep hitting yourself in the same way or hitting the same wall.
Yeah, creative in a way of finding different solutions, for sure. But also creativity as a way of distracting yourself. That, again, I spoke earlier about talking to clients about using painting and drawing as a way of reducing stress, and it really does work.
It does, yeah.
Even if it's painting by numbers. It doesn't matter if that's what's working for someone, because it's that level of concentration on something material that's important to you but not absolutely important.
And also nice sometimes to even feel the frustration that it can bring if you can't quite get it right.
Yeah.
It builds up that resilience to you.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good things behind it. Yeah. Good ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's like my wife sort of does knitting and crocheting for her hobby, and I think something's happened to her. She's not doing it because while she's doing it, she's always talking to herself.
Yeah.
And often going, "Oh, that's gone wrong. I've got to do it again." But it's that she's engaged with it.
Yeah. I've had days with songs when I'm making music, and I just can't find the right line next. I actually enjoy the walk home from the gym to home when I know I'm going to get it, because I always seem to get that line in that walk.
Yeah.
But it's real is a tussle against my own mind in there, and suddenly as I arrive at the door, I'm like, that's the one. That's what I needed to say.
I think quite often when we're looking for a creative solution to something, thinking about it is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Again, I used to find writing software, if there's a problem I was stuck with at the end of the day, I'd just leave it and fix it immediately the next morning.
That's weird. Your brain resets, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think also there are parts of your brain that you've not got conscious access to are kind of working on the problem when you're not thinking about it. It's almost that while you're thinking about it, you get in the brain's way, because maybe...
You get it, that's so true.
Or maybe creativity is using parts of the brain that we don't have full access to.
Would you say that's what some people call the ego then? Like the ego's...
Well, I mean, people talk about sort of left brain, right brain as one thing, but I think it's just that there's the unconscious mind. The ego is more of a conscious thing, I think. I mean, that's part of a model of the self that Freud came up with, which was the id, the ego, and the superego. Whereas the id is the toddler that wants it now, right now.
Yeah.
And the superego is the critical parent says, no, you can't do that because that's a bad thing to do. And the ego is wrestling between the two.
Wow.
So in a way, I think the creativity is more the id side.
Yeah.
It's the inner toddler. Yeah. Rather than the parent says, no, you can't do that. You know?
That's awesome, yeah.
And maybe it's that. So I think there's a childishness as well to creativity. Because it's not learnt, is it? Although you can learn to express your creativity in more ways, what you're coming up with isn't learnt because it's new. It's created.
Yeah. Do you like to put yourself out your comfort zone a lot then? And do you try and pick up new art forms and different creative endeavours?
Well, not particularly. There's stuff that I quite enjoy. I mean, I like a bit of gaming.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity in gaming. I think gaming gets too much of a bad rap a lot of the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm plugging away at the moment again on Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a massive game, and there's loads of little challenges. Yeah. I was really pleased the other day because I killed 3 eagles with tomahawks. It's not an environmentally friendly thing to do, but you've got to remember, boys and girls, that they're just bits of code. They're not real animals. It really
is a game. Because we got a new night now starting in Alfreton, basically replicating similar to what we're doing here, and it's starting up on Fridays, but the council just would not allow me to bring a couple of tellies and game stations because they're like, no, we're getting them away from that. But some kids just want that escapism together, and it's about being in the same room as each other. Maybe they're locked away, and I don't even find that too much of a problem if they're in the comfort zone.
There weren't games around when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. But if we'd go away on holiday, I'd be stuck in a corner the whole time in a book.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be anything, improving, as it were. It was an Alistair MacLean thriller.
Yeah.
Force 10 from Navarone or something like that, or Where Eagles Dare. And I loved it, and I just constantly reading it. Now, sometimes I work with parents who are struggling, my child's spending too much time gaming. I said, if they were reading all the time, would you approve of that? Yes, they often say. I say, well, okay, maybe they're using more of their brain by gaming.
Yeah.
That maybe they're exploring different aspects of self, and it's more interactive. That reading is a relatively passive process. So it's a false prejudice that people have because that wasn't around when I was younger.
It's very sociable now as well.
Thing.
You're in a room. I've said to my mate once, he was like always playing, and he's had his little headset on. And I'm like, mate, you're just a quack in the corner. You've got in this little dark box with nobody around. He's like, mate, I'm with thousands of people. Yeah. You're the one on your own. And I was like, oh no, he's right.
and maybe some parents struggle with that because of their idea they're being excluded from that.
Yeah.
Their kid who wanted to spend time with them now doesn't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what happens with
Do you know what? I did a podcast with somebody before, and it was this dad who was in the army, a really lovely chap, but he was saying he was having such a struggling relationship with his son, and then he ended up being deployed out and going travelling, and then he got, the only way that he could get to him was getting an Xbox, and then getting a headset. They become best friends from that.
Yeah.
and they made this like real connection. So then when he got home, it was a completely different story.
Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's one of my clients. He's away working all the time. When he gets home, his son really wants to fire up the box, and then they're on Fortnite or Call of Duty or something like that, playing together, talking together. How much better is that?
I would say that there's a lot of creativity within that. You're formulating plans with your friends. You're overcoming things. It definitely gets a bad press.
And feeling, you're in that moment,
connected.
So it's that other thing as well. It's not for any of us to tell other people what's an appropriate thing for them to spend their time on.
I agree.
If it's not hurting anybody else, and it's not actively damaging them, and even if it is actively damaging them,
it's not for you.
If they're an adult, they've got a choice to make about that.
Yeah.
We might want to make a suggestion, something more constructive. But if people, let people do what they want to do. When we try and prohibit things that people want to do, we're trying to control private behaviour. It never works. It's never worked in history. And it's a lesson that we continue to fail to learn as a society. So creativity in gaming, I used to enjoy painting. I used to enjoy oil painting. I haven't really got the space to do it all the time, but oil painting is one of the most relaxing things you can ever do, and frustrating.
Yeah. What do you think people push themselves, other than maybe what identities they've created up about themselves from educational, what people have said to them, and that's pushed them away? Why else do you think people just don't seem to gravitate toward it? Well, again, you've got connotations behind it.
Well, yeah, maybe it's because it's seen as some sort of elitist ghetto.
Yeah.
Obviously, hairy-fairy poet types like you promote that idea. Well,
I'm bringing it back to the school grounds.
I know,
man.
exactly. You're Mikey Malcolm, down with the streets.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not some ivory tower activity, is it, for you? It's just something you like to do.
They do exist, but I've been in rooms where I've seen both sides of the party too. But as obviously my thing's bridging the gap from poetry and rap and a bit in between. But did you know rap stands for rhythm and poetry? That's what it's always meant. So it's I go to schools and I say, who likes poetry? And no hands in the air. Who likes rap? And everyone's hands go in the air. I'm like, well, you've lied to me then.
I sometimes wondered if the origins of rap in the American black community was about lack of instruments and the wherewithal to produce music in a conventional term, but also the verbal dexterity required in it seemed to be a statement of intellectual ability.
Totally,
in a society where they were perhaps being disregarded, because when someone is just knocking it out there, the dexterity is amazing.
If you want to learn about that, it's there's a episode on Netflix called The Get Down, and it goes through the history of that timeline. But what you said there is very much, it was that empowering part of it and just showing, we can overcome with our words, which is beautiful.
And it became, from something that was just in poor communities in the back streets, as it were, became a world power global, almost of its own, and it influences kind
still
of
going strong.
All music now.
Yeah, still going really strong.
Yeah.
Frisco, would love to talk to you about this. The guy we do BBC with, he's very old school.
Yeah.
Not saying very old, just very old school.
He's quite old.
Yeah, he's pretty old.
Not nearly as old as me, but he's quite old.
No one is.
That's true. That's true. I remember before I stopped working in banking, I was in a meeting one day and I was thinking, I think I'm the oldest person in that meeting. I thought, you idiot, you've been the oldest person in every meeting you've been in for the last 5 or 10 years. I've
not had that yet. I'm waiting for that day.
Well, you should live so long.
It's getting there.
You should. No, man, come on.
No, some of the meetings I go to, genuinely, because obviously...
That's only because you're working with kids.
We're doing youth work, but then obviously youth workers seem to be of that age. So I've been into some meetings recently and it's like, hi, I'm Ronnie and I'm 22.
And do you think that children are more likely to be creative and more free with it?
Yeah, they've got the sky's the limit kind of thinking, I believe.
They're less likely to exclude themselves by saying, I'm not creative. Because play is creative, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, we had a guy come who's a drama. He does a lot of drama exercises, but he'll get them to actually invent their own games in the session. It's like, right, we're going to play crocodiles versus wizards. Go, and then they've just got to pretend. How do you play crocodiles versus wizards?
Yeah.
And we've got to make their own rules up for it and everything, which is really fun.
Yeah.
And there's so much creativity. They're more likely to jump into it after a little bit of prompting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just sad here that I have had so many young people that have already created that identity about themselves, and it's hard to get that off. But it's
Well, maybe is that more teenagers, than I'm thinking about, the pre-teens?
not all the time. I've had 9-year-olds that come here, and they're struggling still to get involved. I'm really trying to get over here. Come on, we can do this. Let's get together. But I think it only takes that moment as well, when they find that right person at the right time. They're in with that, and then they starts going into other bits.
And do you have to be more creative in your approach to them to get them
Exactly.
engaged?
Mate, today at the gym, that's on the treadmill, all I've been thinking about is those 2 kids, thinking, right, how do I get them? How do we get them ready for these sessions and coming and wanting to work with all the different other kids? Because they try the football and they're too older, the other kids, so they just batter them down.
Yeah.
But then they see everybody else kind of achieving and doing things, so they're a little bit outcast. So that's been very creative today, just considering how to get them involved.
Yeah, and your focus is on those that are not engaged.
Yeah.
The rest can kind of take care of themselves.
You can lead, the facilitators you trust,
Yeah.
and they get going. But again, there is that too cool for school age as well, isn't there? Where they're like, oh, I don't want to show off and show that I'm doing good or doing my thing.
Yeah.
So that can be another block. Everyone's got roadblocks, potential roadblocks. But when I've seen young kids that come here in their element, it's one of the best feelings, because they will just get as fully involved and as creative as possible.
So maybe the root of creativity is just that ability to say, what if? To plunge into something
Feel free.
Without knowing what the outcome is.
Yeah.
And trusting that the outcome's going to be good, or if it isn't good, we'll cope with it and maybe do something better next time.
Yeah, it's going in blind a lot of the time, being fearless and just believing that, well, I'm going to have fun at least.
Well, I
don't
agree with you there about being fearless, because it's sometimes a whole feel the fear and do it anyway.
That's what. Oh yeah, so I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You can feel the fear.
Yeah.
But it's as Nelson Mandela said, that courage is not the absence of fear; it's the willingness to confront it, or something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely an element of creativity.
Yeah.
It's not completely feeling like, oh, whatever, because then you're probably not going to produce your best stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's just whatever. So yeah, definitely maybe be courageous though. It's having an element of courage to you and just going in and going, I'm going to do my best here then.
Yeah, and courage is something that you can learn.
Yeah. How?
by using it.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle; it gets
Oh,
stronger
I did
the
it
more
that
you do
time.
it.
I can do it this time and this time.
And again, it's something I do with my clients. So I use an example. Okay, like someone was frightened of flying, and I said, "Oh, well, okay, well, what happened last time? Did you manage it? Yeah, okay. Well, you've shown you can manage it. Now I want you to think about what you labelled as fear as being excitement, exhilaration. You like going on roller coasters. When that plane's accelerating down the runway, isn't that like being on a fantastic roller coaster? And then you could look out the window. Isn't that a brilliant view? Just change your perspective. There's the creativity in the thinking approach there.
Yeah.
And the way I'm not promoting that that's something I just thought of on the spur of the moment.
Sure.
That's creativity in my practice of what's going to work for that person right there, right now. And riding that wave. I love that, so just riding that wave of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, on Friday I've been asked to do that school job now, and one of the things they want me to do is listen to the whole day and then compile all the words and do a poem at the end of the day to present.
Yeah.
And that fear has come from that, because my usual way of doing it is by sitting there really thinking about what I want to say and spending weeks and weeks reading it and reciting it and thinking about it. But they want it in that moment of spontaneity.
Yeah.
And I've got to produce something. So I love that. Fear the fear. feel the fear and do it anyway kind of approach. Because
you might come up with something like a David Bowie lyric there. You know, people spent years trying to figure out what his lyrics meant.
Yeah.
And then he revealed he just did them with cutouts.
I do that exercise at school. I love doing that. Formed poetry.
Yeah, and who knows what will come out. It sounds great, so it is great.
That workshop came up with one day, or didn't come up with, obviously it had been deployed by the beat poets in the 60s, I think, come up with that method. But we started doing it because I was trying to work out, right, with these young people, how can I use that but with their currency? So we started using rap lyrics and things that they loved, and then we just throw them at each other, and then whatever we picked was the first line of the poem. We go pick and stick, and it just creates something out of nothing. It sounded, it's never not worked. But yeah, that just, it took a bit of a day, hearing an idea, feeling inspired, and then running with it and playing off of that.
Yeah, so maybe that's a thing that is a bar to creativity, is the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
It's being uncomfortable with not knowing what the outcome's going to be.
I like it.
Okay, well...
Mate, I've enjoyed this one. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think we've hopefully covered the subject ramblingly, creatively, I would hope. And maybe what we've discovered, if it's the case, that creativity isn't an activity, it's a way of life. Enjoy it. Bye-bye.
Oh, mate, good.